I mean, to be fair, some people say because this is year 3, that should have been the expectation, and I agree with that. But
Sorry, you guys
realistically,
keep talking. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Keep talking, guys.
yeah, go ahead. I'm saying based on it being year 3, 100% we should have expected that. But when you look at this team realistically, we're far off it, man. We're so far off it. I just watched a couple games last week. The comparison between us, Arsenal, and Liverpool is day and night. They're miles ahead of us, and I will be very honest. I'll give my predictions to the season in the next 2 weeks, but we're far off any title debates. Like I'm ready to be patient just because I know we're nowhere near these conversations. Like us even making top 4 next season, if I'm being very honest, that will probably be success for us. Because with the players that we have so many players that need to leave. Too many of them. And I don't expect all of them to be gone in the first year. And I still expect certain setbacks in the first year in terms of injuries. We already seen one of our best players get injured right after we bought. So I expect setbacks. I expect times for some of these players to take time to get bedded in together and to be bled into the team. I expect so much to not happen in the first season, which is fine because that's just how football is. You don't just sign players and all of a sudden you become good, you know. But I'm ready to be patient. I'm just going to be very realistic with that. I just don't think we're nowhere near any of these conversations. We generally need about still, unfortunately, another 2 3 years before I could start talking about that. Obviously, depending on the recruitment, the type of players we bring.
Yeah.
So
And I think,
I'm ready to be patient.
and that's also based on how good we know City are. So if City were a team that were winning Premier Leagues with less wins, less victories, less points, and far more inconsistency to their play, it would be a different conversation. But it's about the reality of the situation that you find yourself in and who else you're competing against as an example. If you're a budding gymnast and you're like, I want to win the Olympic gold, but Simone Biles is still out there at the peak of her game, you might not even be at the peak of your career yet. The likelihood of you setting the expectation for she already won the individual award, but the 2024 Olympics is probably a little bit beyond you, especially if you're not at your peak yet, especially if you're not quite, there's room for you to grow and get better. However, if Simone Biles and 2 or 3 other top people suddenly retire, maybe the next world championship, you go, actually, well, maybe I can raise my expectations because the level of competition has changed. And all these things play a factor when it comes to expectations. And I think for me, from my perspective, there was a comment that came for a minute ago that says, why shouldn't we win the Premier League, Terry? We've won the other 2 domestic titles. Winning cup competitions is amazing. Winning cup competitions is a beautiful thing, and I want to keep doing it. But the level of consistency needed to win an FA Cup, a League Cup, and even a Champions League pale into insignificance compared to the level of consistency needed to win a Premier League title, especially when you've got Liverpool, Arsenal, and City being as good and as consistent as they are. You have to slow your brain down a little bit, in my personal opinion.
And another thing, domestic success in terms of cups, I should say, has nothing to do with how good you should be performing in the league. Because you can fluke a few domestic cups. We've seen Wigan win an FA Cup. I think they win the was it the Carabao or the FA? I think they won the FA.
They won the FA Cup when they got relegated.
They got relegated.
They beat City in the final. Mad.
That is no indication to how good you can do in the league, because we technically regressed in the league. We went from 3rd to 8th, I think. Where did we finish again? I don't even remember where we finished. That whole season blurred to me now. I don't want to remember it. But it's not a measurement to how good you do in the league. Because if that's how football is not linear like that. People think success is just like a line like this. Oh, I got a Carabao, then an FA. So what's next? Oh, a Premier League. So you're telling me in 2 years we're in the Champions League? Come on, let's just be realistic here. That's not going to happen.
Carl here says 2 or 3 year project for me from United, so I'm not bothered. The most things was to fix the backroom staff and coaches, and we were doing, yeah, exactly. And that was the first thing that you're fixing, because you can't fix the first team, you can't fix the team until you fix the foundation of the club, and we've done a lot that way. And there's loads of other things happening as well. By December we're going to know what we're doing. We're probably going to listen, man. There's so many things to be excited about. We are going to build the biggest stadium in European football history. In fact, it's going to be one of the 3 biggest stadiums in world football. I think there might be a bigger one somewhere in North Korea, but whether that's true or not, no one really knows. I think there's 2 college stadiums in America, one being the Beaver Stadium, that are going to be bigger, but 100,000 seat stadium. So many great things.
What's
Many
the
great
finances
things.
by that, Terry? I know you was going for a grant. How much is getting paid for Man United? How much are Man United paid? Because I said we quoted £1 billion, wasn't it? The stadium?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking. This is where cross wires come through. So Man United are not looking for any public funding, as far as we're aware right now, to build the actual stadium. What they're looking to do is essentially, if you're from Manchester, this is a good thing. They're trying to take government funds that are sort of held in London, essentially, and they're trying to get the government to put billions of pounds into restoring the area. So building shopping malls, bowling alleys, arcades, cinemas, restaurants, shopping centers, and things like that around that area. There's a load of open space and loads of just sort of derelict land in that area that they want the government to help fund. Man United, they probably won't pay for any of their own stadium either. They will get private funding for that, which is what most clubs don't build their own stadiums out of their own pocket. Sponsors and investors will do that. Arsenal didn't build their own stadium. The Emirates did, and they took bank loans. They had to pay the bank loans back, but a lot of that is paid by the sponsorships and then the additional revenue that you generate. So I very much doubt that
how much if you do take bank loans, how much that affects your transfer spending going forward.
Yeah, no, of course. I don't think that they will do it with a bank loan. I think what they'll seek to do is take investment, and some of that investment will be connected to stadium sponsorships. And I'm open to it. I don't care whether it's called the iPhone Stadium, because I'm just going to call it Old Trafford. It really, like, you look at you're a prime example. Now that you're there and you've won a European trophy for the first time, do you actually care that it's not called Upton Park anymore? Like, in reality, when you were lifting that European trophy and were you sitting there going, hey, this don't fucking mean anything because it's not called Upton Park anymore? The answer is no. And we're not even leaving the area. We're literally moving next door. Like, one of the conversations that they're happening, and someone says by December it'll be finalized, is we may build the new 100,000 seater stadium, do some regenerative work on the current stadium, and that current stadium will become for the youth team, the academy, and the women's team. So we actually could have two stadiums next door to each other at the same time, which is just, and that way you've got the historic element that you can still do tours of, make money out of, and then you've got the new stadium. But because they're next door to each other, I don't care about whether you build a new one or not. It's the only thing.
Be homeless for a while then.
No, the idea we won't be homeless. The idea will be that we'll still play at Old Trafford until the new one's built. So yeah, like I like it, and
you might go begging to Man City again and go, like.
Well, I mean, they probably can't stop us because they're in a council house anyway. They don't own their stadium; it's a council property, so they probably have to let us. But City won't let us anyway. Because how embarrassing would it be for Man City and Man United selling out their stadium more than they do? They wouldn't be able to live it down. They wouldn't be able to live it down. Because they don't sell it out enough. Imagine Man United selling their stadium and taking that revenue. No, they won't be sharing it. That's also why I think we'll build a new one next to it. So, but this crazy lie that's going around that Man United's owners want taxpayers' money to physically build our stadium. It's such a twisting of the truth. But I remember when you guys were getting your new stadium, the amount of lies that were told about it, like you were stealing off the taxpayer, was crazy. That went around from people.
Buy it.
I know.
We tried to actually buy it outright, but Daniel Levy and Barry Hearn, put a stop to it, and then that's why we had to rent it, because they didn't want us buying the stadium for some reason.
Yeah, well, my brother's an Orient fan. They're very unhappy with what you guys did moving to Stratford, because you are in there.
Yeah, apparently, we took all their fans and we killed them, somehow.
Well, no, it's not quite that, but to a degree. But there is a rule. There is a law within English football that means you shouldn't have been allowed to have got the stadium because of how close it was. I don't quite know what the law's called, but essentially, the bigger the club, there's a remit to how close to other football clubs you can now move. So it did actually break rules, but it's Orient, isn't it? No disrespect, bruv, if you're watching, but it's Orient. Like, what? No, I agree. I actually think it's better for fix the leaky roof first, Terry. Going on. Listen, we're not going to. We'll do a little bit of renovation. Stop being so bitter, because we're going to have the biggest and the best. But by the way, we've got the leaky roof. All these other clubs have built new stadiums. We still get between 15 to 30,000 more fans in a week than all these other new builds. When we're hitting 100, do you know how much it's going to hurt certain fan bases seeing 100,000 Man United fans at a game week in, week out? It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt people. It's going to hurt people. But that's what happens when you're the biggest team in England and one of the biggest in the world. But yeah, I'm happy with what we're doing. Season starts for us in just over a week. And yeah, man, it's gonna be a very, very interesting season indeed. Super chats here. First one says, I agree with Staffy. Get it done quick, but I have a hot take. I don't think we need to get a midfielder for this summer. The midfield looked bad because the manager didn't do the adjustments. He's fixed them.
Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Do you not see our midfield? Do you not see our midfield? Come on, man. I said this after the Arsenal game when I watched against Arsenal last week. Our technical floor is so low and it's embarrassing, and the majority of it is in our midfield. I actually rate our front line now on our back line, especially with the signings, more than the midfield. We're going into last game with what was the midfield that we start? We started McTominay, Casemiro. I think it was Ericsson. Come on, are we even joking here? You don't need a midfielder. We've needed two midfielders for a while now. Come on, man. This is a joke. I mean, thank you for the first part of the super chat saying you agree with me, but nah, you couldn't be more wrong. We definitely need at least two midfielders. We can't go into the season with this midfield that we have.
I agree with what you have said, Staffy. Where I will agree slightly with Joshua Jack is that I do believe we've addressed the holes in the midfield last year in terms of leaving the DM completely exposed by the 2-8s bombing forward and nobody covering in those positions. So I don't think we're going to leak the opportunities that we did last year. That element I do agree with. This MR10 says, Terry, you said you're willing to give Sancho a chance, a player with bad form and a bad attitude. Why don't you have the same energy with a player who at least doesn't have a bad attitude in Anthony? So it's a really good challenge in terms of the logic behind things. So I'm not adverse to Anthony getting another opportunity based on everybody improving at the club because the club's going to move to another level. However, I just believe that Anthony is a far, far inferior football player compared to Sancho. So as much as where I look at Sancho and think, yes, there were some problems with him, but there's been problems with everybody at our club. Everybody has regressed. Nobody has got to the level we expected, including Anthony. I still think, on a personal, subjective level, that Sancho is a vastly superior football player. Therefore, we have to sacrifice some people, right? So we have to sell some players. Even when your club's in a good position, you typically sell players every year. So if we're picking on who we think should go, I'd rather give Sancho another chance than Anthony. Because a bad Sancho, I still think will perform better for us than a good attitude and everything else from Anthony. So that's my logic behind it. But it's a good challenge.